Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your attendance on this morning's webinar. This particular webinar is going to be BTC Software and Sue Moore of Sue Moore Tax LLP. And in today's webinar, we're going to be delivering greater benefits to accountants. I'm very lucky to be joined with Sue Moore for today's webinar. So that is me and Sue. I think yeah, lovely pictures of us both with some lovely greenery actually in the in the background there. So for those of you who aren't aware of BTC Software, we'll have a little intro slide into who BTC Software are. So a couple of points there. We were very proud of the fact that we picked up multiple Accounting Web Software Excellence Awards of the year. We believe that the voting is still open. So if you are an existing customer, we would value your votes for the Accounting Web Software Excellence Awards. We picked up several awards to do with Practice Management of the Year, Accountancy Practice Suite of the Year, Tax and Accounts as well. We have around 10,000 users of our software. That number has dramatically increased actually with the introduction of MTD and MTD for VAT. We've brought on multiple businesses as well as accountants in practice that are reliant on our software now. So we cater for both accountants in practice and also accountants in business. We've had over 22 years of experience. Initially, we were founded way back now, specializing in business tax in 1999 or roughly around that sort of time. Furthermore, we added self-assessment, practice management, and then in 2014 we added accounts production, which kind of formed the final piece of the puzzle, which now is known as the solution suite, so one integrated suite. We do offer high quality technical support. All our support is UK based. We offer full telephone support from Monday to Friday, which I can mention a bit later on. We've got seamless integration between all solutions within our software, and we believe we're excellent value for money as well. So I'll leave our mission statement up on there. I'm not going to read this out, but you can see this is our ethos, our company ethos in terms of what we go by and how we believe this best sums up our business and what we do. So the types of solutions that we offer at BTC Software include self-assessment, individual, partnership, trust tax returns. We have corporation tax returns, accounts production, which offers many different templates for things like charities. We get FRS 102 templates, 102 1A, 105, for example, as well, and also templates for things like partnerships, trusts, and sole traders. We offer practice management. Many features of practice management, which can include a client hub or a client database to store all of your client details. And we've got many additional features to do with task tracking, reminders that you can set up, reporting, document management, and some integration with some document portals as well for e-signing. There's actually two variants of our software. You have the desktop version and then you have the solution cloud. The difference is the solution cloud is hosted, so we host the database using Amazon Web Services. So we'd install a VPN onto your machine so that you can access the software remotely. We understand that working from home is now more important than ever. So having that ability and that flexibility to be able to work from home, we provide with the solution cloud. The direction of BTC Software is to actually move all of the desktop software that we have into a web browser based solution, and that's kind of where we're headed at the moment. So for those of you who know about the MTD, and this segues me quite nicely, for those of you who know about the MTD solution, that our MTD for VAT solution is purely cloud based. So the advantages of that is you can log in from anywhere, from any machine, and you're always going to have the most up-to-date software. So that is the direction of BTC Software, is to move accounts, corporation tax, self-assessment, all of that top row into BTC Hub, which now houses the VAT solution. And then the CS solution is the final bubble that we've got there, which is our company secretarial module. So there's various different features that you'll find on there. You've got automatic integration with Companies House. You can form companies on there. You can file confirmation statements. And there's templates for things like dividend vouchers, minutes, and resolutions. So some example integrations that we offer. We offer integration with various different bookkeeping packages, which you can see on the kind of the top two rows there. We've got Free Agent, Xero, QuickBooks, Reckon One, and Sage. The integration that we have with some of those is that you can log into the bookkeeping package directly from within our software. pick up the associated trial balance with that client and the right year, import the trial balance with a click of a button, and then all those journals and adjustments that you create, including bringing the corporation tax provision back to the set of accounts, you can post back to the bookkeeping package, again, directly from within our software. So what we're offering here is not just kind of a fancy logging, but a two-way integration, a two-way street with those bookkeeping packages. And then we've got a couple of options at the bottom there, My DocSafe and DocuSign, that will handle all of your GDPR compliance needs in terms of sending documents directly from our software through a secure portal. Then what happens is the client is email notified that you sent them a document using that My DocSafe or DocuSign link. There'll be within that email a link to sign into their account, which they can access on their phone, laptop, tablet. They can pick up the document within their client portal, electronically sign it off, and then send it straight back to you. So that's enough about BTC software. I hope I haven't gone on too long there, but really the main kind of crux of the webinar, the reason I'm sure some of you are here, are to listen to Sue Moore of Sue Moore Tax LLP. So thank you very much, Sue, for joining us. I will pass over to you now if you're there.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan, and thank you for joining us for this webinar this morning. I thought it would help if I started by talking about my background and how I got to where I am now. So I set up as a part-time private client practice in 2003, but before that I trained and qualified as a chartered accountant with Pricewaterhouse and was an audit manager with them before I saw the light and converted over to tax. And I took over the personal tax, trusts and estates department, as it was called then, in the Pricewaterhouse office in Leicester. I left there and had a career break to raise the children, and then when I returned to work I went to Grant Thornton. I took the tax exams as an easy way to get back up to date in all the taxes, and I was also an early member of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. After GT I went to BDO and I was a partner there, and it was after leaving there that I set up my own practice. I've always concentrated on the personal tax and trust side. I've got a smattering of partnerships and lifestyle companies, and I don't do straight companies. I only do companies that are associated with my clients. I always intended that the practice would be a part-time practice, and at the same time as running the practice, I was an employee at various places, latterly with the ICAEW as their private client tax technical manager. I set up with about 12 clients, so not enough to keep the wolf from the door, but it's grown from there. And when I set up, there were very few software providers that were suitable for such a small business. I'd spent some time at BDO doing detailed research into about half a dozen software providers to choose one to use within the East Midlands branch of BDO. And so I knew what to look for in software anyway. But I knew from that PTP was, as I say, one of the few that was suitable for a small business. And so I purchased the PTP. I had to buy 3 sets of software because it was different software for the personal tax, the trusts and the partnership. And I ran with that for, 10 years. By which time the business had expanded, I'd got more clients and I decided to take on an employee. And because of that, the PTP software costs would double overnight because you had to pay for each user. And it was basically the full price for each user. And so I needed to look again at software. And that was when I started looking at BTC. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Dan. How did I get to BTC? Well, I looked at the accounting web surveys, and BTCSoftware was consistently at the top for personal tax. It just seemed to do so well for everything. And when I first started doing tax, we didn't have computers. All tax returns were filled in manually. But when I went back after my career break, the tax software that we had at GT, it was DOS based. And if you didn't understand tax, if you didn't know tax, then you couldn't use the software, because you had to drill down to get to where, for example, you entered a dividend onto the tax return. With the advent of Windows in the mid-90s, which coincided with the self-assessment regime, it suddenly became much easier. And so any software that you bought that was Windows-based, it became so simple to fill in a tax return, because if it said dividend on the voucher that you'd got in your hand, then you just clicked on dividend on the software and you entered the amount in. So that did make software so much simpler. I did try BTC out. I had a little trial with it for a month, and then I bought it. The price was right. It was a very good price. It was the same price then, and I don't know what the pricing structure is now if you've got a desktop-based one, but I think I could have had up to 10 staff. I never wanted to be that large in my practice, but it was the same price. The transfer from PTP, it was just so easy. It was just a couple of clicks, and there was no issues at all. All the client information came over. The software was simple to operate. As I say, once you've got Windows, it becomes very easy. So I've got this new trainee, and who'd never done tax before at all. And so the task that she was set right at the beginning was to enter up the last year's returns that I'd done on PTP onto BTC. And the reason for that was it gave her a chance to familiarise herself with the software, with tax returns generally, and with my client base. She could see what all of them were. And it was then simply because I got BTC in about the March, and so all the clients were entered on for the previous year's return. I was then able to produce the aid memoir that the software contains, the facility to do that, which I could then just send to clients to request the next year's information. It had got everything on there that had been included on the previous year's return, and how much it was. And so it was very simple then for clients to either fill that in or just use it as a tick list as they pulled the information together. And I have to say that over half of my clients love the aid memoir. The others are the ones that aren't very good at collecting information anyway, and probably just bin the aid memoir when it comes in, and then ask me in January, what do you need for the tax return? And I'm sure that you've all got clients like that as well. And I usually just say, well, if you look at the aid memoir, that will help you. And it was very good training for my trainee, and she's now almost qualified as a chartered tax advisor. Just one exam left to go. So yeah, so I think that was it was a good decision. I've had no regrets. The support when I have needed it has been excellent. If you either ring up or send an email, the response is immediate, and they never make me feel small. You'll see there I've got the acronym there, PICNIC. That's where it's a problem in the chair, not in the computer. And I have to confess that that is quite often applicable to my problems. And as I always explain to the very patient support workers, I'm very good at tax. I'm not necessarily very good with computers. And as I say, they never make me feel inadequate, but, which is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. Do you want to move on to the next slide, please, Dan? So having started with the tax software, and it included the trust and the partnerships as well as the personal tax, that was all part of the same package. I think I used it for a year before I then tried the PMS as well, the practice management system. And I have to say that that just saves so much time. It is just so easy to produce engagement letters, disengagement letters, professional clearance letters, tax payment reminders, the fee notes, the letters sending the fee notes. You just create them as the standard, and you can link it into the appropriate tax year. So you can pull through the appropriate information that you need, and it just saves so much time. As I've already mentioned, the aid memoirs, they're there as a standard. They're very good. I tailor the letter each year at the beginning that the aid memoir is attached to, and so you can have appropriate reminders in the covering letter. The report facility as well, I find that extremely useful. It's I use it for the tax return progress, and so I can pull up and see where I'm at with all of the tax returns. I can see where they're in progress, where they're with client, and it just enables me to manage the workload and see where I'm at with all of those clients. And previously I'd used a spreadsheet, and you don't always update the spreadsheet at the right time, and then it's not useful anymore because it's not got the correct information on, where of course the report facility within the software is always up to date. It just automatically keeps it up to date. And you can export the report into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to add extra things into it. I tend to use it to allocate the order that I'm going to do the returns in. So quite often I'll pull out a report and export it into Excel, and then I'll mark it up as to which order I'm going to do the returns in, and just keep that as a reminder. And then once I've done that, I can delete that spreadsheet. The printed output that you get for the tax returns, I think, looks very professional. I've always said that it doesn't matter how much work you have to put into a tax return, all the client sees at the end of the day is the tax return that you send to them to approve. And they're going to judge you on how good or how bad that looks. It's because they're not aware of the work that goes into it necessarily. So the package that you send them has to look top notch if you're going to charge a top notch fee. I'm finding, in fact, that fewer and fewer clients want a paper copy of the return. They just want the electronic version. But a lot of my older clients, they like to have a paper copy. I always bind them. And they look really good, and I'm very proud of the returns that I send out, and that's because of the way that BTC produces them. The tax calculation that's produced by the software is easy for clients to follow. I will often refer to it in the covering letter so that they can pick out items that are of interest to them in the tax calculation. How much have I had to pay on my dividends? How much have I had to pay on my employment? And so it's easy for them to follow that through in conjunction with my letter of explanation. The software itself offers so many facilities that I associate with the software used by, say, the top 20 firms. So the sort of software that I was looking at when I was reviewing it for BDO all those years ago, it does seem to offer everything that I could think of for the software, but it's at a price point that's affordable by smaller practices like me. But the software can grow with you. So it's available for smaller and larger firms, but it's excellent, particularly to offer so many facilities for smaller practices. And that's why I've stuck with them as well. Do you want to move on to the next slide, please, Dan? So how does it help with my risk management? Well, one of the key things that you've got to make sure of course, is that you don't miss deadlines and that clients' returns are filed on time, that they're reminded on time to make their tax payments. And the tax return progress report that I've already mentioned helps to keep focused on the deadlines and to make sure that all those are done. You can pull out a report to show what July payments need to be made, and so it's very easy to remind clients of those. It's very difficult to forget to put something on a return if it's been there before, because when you roll forward to the next year, it pulls through what was on the previous years, and you can't check and calculate the return until you've done something with those boxes. Either entered the current year's information, or if it's no longer relevant, deleted it. But that's got to be an action by you. And so it's a reminder and stops you overlooking information that should be in there. I find there's a notes box as well that's as soon as you open the return, the notes box comes up on the opening screen for the return. And that notes box carries forward from year to year. And I use that a lot to put reminders in for next year. So a client might say to me when they've given me the information for the tax year that's just ended, and they'll say, oh, but I closed that account in July and there's a new one now. And I can put a little reminder in the notes box that there's a new account to ask for when I'm collecting the information for the next year. I also make a note in there of capital losses to make sure that I remember to carry those forward on the tax return if there's no capital gains tax pages on the current year, but I've got losses for previous years. So I find that very helpful, and I think it reduces my risk because I can enter information at the time that I know it, and I don't have to keep it in my head, and it's there when I need it next time. Also, by using the practice management system, I've got my engagement letters and disengagement letters on there as standards. And so it's a very simple process to issue an engagement letter to a new client. And also I have the professional clearance letters on there. And so I can write to the accountant tax advisor who's previously acted and get professional clearance. And there's no delay in it. Sometimes, I mean, before I had the practice management system, it was a bit of a pain doing an engagement letter, and it was something that could easily drop to the bottom of the list, even though I know it shouldn't. So it's extremely helpful having it there, and I can get it out straight away. And similarly with disengagement letters, it's important to register the date straight away that you're saying that you're not acting for them anymore, and to get that letter out to the client who's leaving. Also, you get easy access when you're using the tax software. You get easy access to the revenue guides and to the help sheets, and so it can be very useful sometimes. The help sheets, pulling those up to see how something should be entered on the return. There are various things that I don't have to use very often, and I often struggle to think, well, how do I show that? how does that have to be recorded? And so it's great just to be able to click on the button and get the right guide up just when you need it. The next slide, please, Dan. Thank you. So there's been a lot of developments in BTC during my time with them, which is about 8-9 years now. And changes I particularly like, well, the cloud. It did add extra cost, but it was well worth it, particularly with COVID and working from home. It was useful before then because my trainee would sometimes work from home, and that wasn't possible without the cloud, to actually enter up the information on the tax return. So by getting the cloud, that made working more flexible for my staff. And then, as I say, particularly since COVID, when there was a lot more working from home, the cloud has been an absolute godsend. And I haven't had any problems with it at all. The information is just there at the click of the button. So yes, a very good improvement. There's also a couple of boxes now that you get on most of the entries that you can make onto the return. There's a do not roll forward and a to be confirmed. The do not roll forward, I like that. Again, going back to if a client says to you, oh, well, this account closed during the tax year, and this is the closing interest, you can put that in, and then you can click the do not roll forward box. And so that's not going to roll forward into the next year's return. So you're not going to be saying to the client, oh, you've not given me the interest for your post office account number XYZ. And they'll say, but I told you last year that I'd closed that. So the do not roll forward is very helpful. And the to be confirmed. Now this, I used to get very irritated in the early stages of BTC because I would start entering information onto a tax return, and a client would want an estimate of the tax paid, and I still wouldn't have all the information. But the software didn't allow you to do a calculation until the information was entered. So you either had a choice of deleting the line or putting in an estimate. But whichever you did, you then got to remember to either put the line back in or change the estimate. Whereas now I can put in a figure, I can tick the to be confirmed box, and I can do my rough calculation as to how much tax is likely to be payable. So that has saved me a lot of time and has enabled me to improve the service to clients. I can tell them very quickly the tax estimate once I've got most of the information entered, and I just need the last bits. Again, going back to COVID, this report of income and profit data for individuals. And early on with the lockdown, when the government announced the support scheme for self-employed, the SEISS, and I don't do trade, which has become quite a joke amongst some of my colleagues. So I don't have that many people who do trade, but I do have some. And so I needed to know if they would qualify for the grant if their business was impacted. And although I don't have many, I was scratching my head wondering how long it would take me to pull out the information from each of the previous 3 years' tax returns to see what their total income was, what their self-employed income was, and whether or not they would qualify for it. And whilst I was still scratching my head and wondering, BTC produced a report facility that did it all for me. They sent out an email saying that they were in progress of doing this report, and so it meant that I could stop scratching my head straight away. And then the report arrived. The speed with which they produced that report was phenomenal as far as I was concerned, and the ease with which I could extract the information, it was fantastic. I've got one client, and she's a professional photographer, and her main sources of income are wedding. She does a lot of wedding photography, and she does a lot of food photography, which is either doing photos for websites for restaurants or food festivals, and all of her business, of course, stopped. And so it was obvious right from the beginning that she would need some support, would need some help. The BTC report enabled me to produce her figures straight away. She did qualify. I then volunteered this client to go into the trial that HMRC were running to see if their software worked. And so she got her grant before it was generally available. So that was a very happy client. And thanks to BTC, I was able to do it so quickly. If you'd like to go on to the next slide, please, Dan. So since having the tax software, the personal tax trusts and partnerships, and the practice management system, I now have the VAT for making tax digital link for my one VAT registered client. He's a barrister, so I don't class him as trade. I don't think he'd class himself as trade either. And so, yes, so the VAT for MTD link is particularly suitable for him because, like I think all barristers, his information is kept by chambers, and he's just traditionally had a quarterly report to do his own VAT return, and that's all he gets now. And so that's very easy to use the BTC software to get that into his VAT return and satisfy the MTD requirements. I've just, from April, moved on to the corporation tax software. I only do about half a dozen companies, if that. And so I thought I'd stuck with BTC, but I eventually decided, well, I can't see any reason for, I'd stuck with PTP, and I couldn't see any reason for not moving on to BTC. And so I did do. And I've now done 3 corporation tax returns on it. And the difficulty I'm having with that is that I'm not as familiar with corporation tax returns as I am with personal tax returns, but the software does guide me and help me. And so, yes, it's just a case of me familiarizing myself rather than any problems with the software. And the last step that I haven't done yet will be accounts production. That's going to take some courage, I think, because it took me so long to set up the accounts. I think BTC need to assure me it won't take me long to set up the accounts on their software. But then I think I'll be totally BTC when I've done that. So I hope you found this helpful and my insights into why I chose BTC and why I've stayed with them. And I hope it makes your decision making a little bit easier. So thank you very much for listening. Back to you, Dan.
So if you are interested in trying BTC software for yourself, if you feel inspired by what you've heard today from Sue, you're more than welcome to trial the software as Sue did, or you can request for a one-to-one demo with myself or one of the members of the sales team. And we also have the YouTube channel on there as well. So we've got various different YouTube videos, whether it's support style videos, pre-recorded webinars such as this one, which I believe will be uploaded onto YouTube, and also some showcase style videos as well of new products and releases. So if you do have any questions, myself and Sue will be staying at the end for any questions that you do have. You can use that questions box on the right-hand side on that GoToMeeting panel. Yeah, any questions that you've got, they are completely anonymous, so we won't read out your names. And you can ask anything that you like. So both Sue and I will go on mute for a couple of minutes, wait for those questions to come in, but this is the end of the webinar. So if you did want to pose any questions to the actual sales team, you can contact us at sales@btcsoftware.co.uk, call us on the telephone number, option 1, and you can ask for either myself, Tim, or Tom. So thank you for joining me on the webinar. As I said, we will be staying at the end for questions. Thank you to Sue for joining us as well. Very much grateful for that. And we hope to see you on the next BTC Software webinar. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have had a couple of questions. Some of you have requested that I email you directly, which I'm more than happy to do. So if you did want to reach out, or if you wanted us to reach out to you, just you could put a kind of a E into the chat box, for example, and we can drop you an email. So if you are interested in us contacting you directly, and you didn't want to ask a question on the webinar, that's absolutely fine. For those of you who've asked about pricing of the software, how the software is priced is essentially priced on requirement. So it's priced on what you need in terms of your client numbers, your user numbers, and the modules that you need. So as the pricing is very bespoke, I couldn't give you an exact price on the particular webinar. However, we can contact you and email those details over, or we can give you a quotation over the phone. A couple of questions that are in relation to the trial. The trial is now 7 days. It does include all of the functionality. The only thing that it doesn't include is charity accounts and MTD for VAT. If you're interested in either of those modules, you can request for a one-to-one demo, or we do have YouTube videos as well that show that particular software. Someone else has asked, is there telephone support on the trial? Yep, there's absolutely. We do offer full telephone support on the trial, as we do on the full product. So it gives you the opportunity to actually trial the level of support that we offer, as well as the software itself. I think that pretty much does cover it. Someone has said, are you integrating with Sage? We are looking to integrate with Sage in terms of a two-way integration. Right now it is a CSV file, but we are speaking with Sage at the moment in order to get the APIs in place so that we can have that two-way integration with the Sage bookkeeping packages. There's quite a few packages that they offer, but it would have to be a cloud one. So I think it's Sage 1 and Sage Business Cloud, I think, are the two that we're looking at. I know there was word of Line 50, but I'm not sure if that's a cloud version. If it is, then I believe the API is the same for that as well. So it should be able to work on all Sage versions. I think that covers all of the questions that I've got. Obviously, a couple of you have requested that we contact you directly. So that leaves me to just say thank you for attending this particular webinar. We really do appreciate your attendance. If you'd like a copy of the recording, do let us know. And obviously a really, really big thank you as well to Sue for joining us on this webinar. I think it was particularly valuable for new users and existing users as well, where Sue maybe mentioned a couple of the features that maybe you weren't aware of. So yeah, big thank you to Sue as well. And that is the end of the webinar. So thank you everyone for joining me. If you do have any questions, again, the contact details are on screen, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much. Goodbye.